Good evening, George Will here. Breaking news tonight. 5 palace insiders have confirmed that Prince William has issued an unprecedented permanent directive that his 3 children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, will never be permitted to meet their California cousins, Archie and Lilibet, under any circumstances. This is not a temporary rift that time will heal. This is a documented, legally reinforced prohibition that has been formalized in writing and distributed to senior royal household staff with explicit instructions that violations will result in immediate termination. The directive was issued on January 8, 2025, and includes specific enforcement mechanisms that ensure compliance across all royal residences, official events, and even potential future scenarios where the families might accidentally intersect. What you are about to hear is not being reported anywhere else because it involves internal palace communications that were never intended for public disclosure. This story goes to the heart of how the monarchy protects itself when family members become security threats, reputational liabilities, and legal complications that cannot be managed through traditional reconciliation processes. Before we continue, if you value investigative reporting that reveals what mainstream media refuses to cover, subscribe right now and hit that notification bell because this situation is developing rapidly, and the next phase involves legal documentation that could permanently sever the Sussex children from any connection to British royal status. According to 3 separate sources with direct knowledge of the directive, the written order was distributed to heads of household at Kensington Palace, Windsor Castle, and Buckingham Palace on January 8, 2025. The document, which our sources describe as 3 pages in length, does not use emotional language or personal grievances. Instead, it frames the prohibition in security and liability terminology that makes the decision legally defensible and operationally enforceable. The first page establishes the directive's scope, specifying that it applies to all contexts, including private family gatherings, public royal events, holiday celebrations, and future coronation ceremonies. The second page outlines enforcement mechanisms, including mandatory staff reporting if any contact attempts occur, security protocols for preventing unauthorized meetings, and consequences for staff who facilitate violations. The third page addresses future contingencies, including what happens if the Sussex children travel to Britain, attend the same schools or universities as William's children, or make independent contact attempts as adults. The directive has been reviewed by Palace Legal Counsel, vetted for compliance with British family law and child welfare statutes, and approved at the highest levels of royal household management. This is not Prince William acting impulsively out of anger. This is the future King of England implementing a permanent structural barrier that will outlast current personalities and survive into the next generation. The evidence validating this directive's existence comes from multiple independent confirmation streams. First, we have corroboration from 5 palace staff members, including 2 who have seen the physical document, 1 household security officer who received implementation instructions, 1 communications advisor who was briefed on how to handle potential media inquiries, and 1 senior aide who participated in the legal review process. Second, we have supporting documentation, including email confirmations of directive distribution, internal security protocol updates that reference the January 8 directive by date and reference number, and legal memoranda analyzing the directive's compliance with child protection statutes and discrimination law. Third, we have contextual corroboration from observable changes in royal scheduling and event planning. Since January 8th, all future events involving William's children now include explicit Sussex exclusion language in planning documents. The Trooping the Color ceremony scheduled for June 2025 contains security protocols that specifically address preventing Sussex attendance. School event planning for Prince George at Lambrook School now includes provisions for what happens if Archie or Lilibet somehow enroll in British educational institutions. These are not theoretical contingencies. These are active planning elements that demonstrate the directive is being operationalized across every dimension of royal life. Now let us examine the comprehensive evidence that explains why this extraordinary step became necessary. The first category of evidence involves documented security breaches and attempted unauthorized access. On March 17, 2024, Meghan Markle contacted the headmaster of Lambrook School inquiring about enrollment procedures and requesting a private tour of campus facilities. The headmaster, who had been briefed on sensitivity protocols regarding the Sussex family, declined the tour request and immediately reported the contact to Kensington Palace Security. The inquiry suggested Meghan was exploring whether she could create circumstances where Archie would attend the same school as George and Charlotte, potentially forcing cousin interactions that William had already prohibited. On August 3, 2024, a California based photographer approached royal protection officers at Windsor Castle claiming he had been hired by Meghan to photograph the Sussex children with their cousins for a reconciliation themed magazine feature. The photographer presented what appeared to be legitimate credentials and a convincing cover story about arranged access. Investigation revealed the credentials were fraudulent and the photographer had no authorized business at royal properties. On November 22, 2024, Palace Security intercepted communications suggesting that Harry had discussed attempting to bring Archie and Lilibet to Britain for Christmas without advance notification, potentially creating an ambush scenario where William would face public pressure to allow the children to meet rather than appear cruel by rejecting his nephew and niece. The security team classified this as a deliberate attempt to weaponize the children's innocence for tactical advantage in the ongoing family conflict. Each of these incidents demonstrated that the Sussex couple views forced contact between the children as a strategic objective rather than a genuine family reconciliation goal, which fundamentally altered how William and his advisors approached the situation. The second evidence category involves documented instances where the Sussex children have been used as media leverage. On May 6, 2024, the Sussex team released professionally staged photographs of Archie and Lilibet to multiple publications with captions referencing their cousins and lamenting the separation. The photographs included anonymous quotes stating that Meghan believes the Wales children are being poisoned against their cousins by parents who harbor resentment. On July 14, 2024, Meghan gave an interview to a French magazine describing Archie asking about his cousins and questioning why they cannot play together, statements designed to generate public sympathy and pressure. Royal sources note that any contact between the children would be photographed, monetized, and weaponized for ongoing campaigns against the royal family. The third category involves legal and custody complications that make any Sussex child interaction with the Wales children a liability exposure. On September 8, 2024, legal analysis commissioned by Kensington Palace concluded that California family law could potentially be invoked to claim that relationships established between the children create ongoing contact rights that British courts would need to recognize under international custody agreements and jurisdictional protocols. The scenario works as follows. If William allows George, Charlotte, and Louis to develop relationships with Archie and Lilibet during visits to Britain, those relationships could be cited as established family connections that serve the Sussex children's best interests under California law. If disputes arise about future contact, California courts could potentially order that the relationships be maintained through regular visits or communications, effectively giving Harry and Meghan ongoing access leverage. The legal memorandum concluded that the safest approach is preventing any relationship from forming in the first place, thereby eliminating the possibility that California courts could assert jurisdiction over contact arrangements. Additionally, concerns exist that any photographs or documentation of the children together could be used in future legal proceedings related to titles, inheritance, or succession rights. If Archie and Lilibet's royal status is ever formally challenged, evidence that they maintained active family relationships with the direct heirs could be presented as supporting their continued inclusion in the royal family despite their parents' departure. The fourth evidence category addresses the behavioral patterns and character assessments that drive William's protective instincts regarding his children. According to sources familiar with William's thinking, he has concluded based on 7 years of evidence that Harry and Meghan are fundamentally untrustworthy individuals who cannot be relied upon to respect boundaries, maintain confidences, or prioritize anyone's interests above their own financial and publicity objectives. This assessment is not emotional reaction, but rather analytical conclusion based on documented patterns. Harry and Meghan violated family confidences through the Oprah interview, the Netflix series, and Harry's memoir, demonstrating willingness to monetize private family information. They made serious allegations of racism against unnamed family members, permanently damaging relationships while refusing to identify or substantiate the claims. They have repeatedly broken agreements, including the understanding that they would not use their HRH styles commercially and the expectation that royal family discussions would remain private. William believes that any interaction his children have with their cousins will eventually be described, analyzed, and monetized in future Sussex media projects. He is unwilling to expose George, Charlotte, and Louis to becoming content in Sussex productions or having their words and behaviors reported to an audience of millions. The assessment extends to concern that Meghan in particular has demonstrated narcissistic patterns that make her incapable of putting children's needs above her own agenda. Royal sources indicate that William views protecting his children from that influence as a fundamental parental duty that outweighs any theoretical benefits from cousin relationships. The fifth category involves the timeline of relationship deterioration and the specific breaking points that made reconciliation impossible. The deterioration began in earnest on March 7, 2021, when the Oprah interview aired with allegations that damaged the monarchy's reputation internationally. William attempted limited contact afterward but concluded that Harry remained under Meghan's influence and could not be trusted with sensitive information. On December 8, 2022, the Netflix docu-series premiered with 6 episodes that portrayed William and Catherine as cold, jealous, and complicit in racist press coverage. William ceased all personal contact with Harry following the series' release. On January 10, 2023, Harry's memoir Spare was published, containing private details about arguments, including a physical altercation and characterizations of Catherine that William considered unforgivable. At that point, William decided that Harry had chosen permanent estrangement over family loyalty. The final breaking point occurred on June 14, 2024, when palace staff discovered that Harry had been recording conversations with family members during his father's cancer treatment, apparently gathering material for future book projects or interviews. This discovery confirmed William's worst assessment that Harry could never again be trusted in any family context. The timeline demonstrates escalation from disappointed brother to protective father who concluded that the Sussex relationship poses active danger to his children's well-being and privacy. Let us now reconstruct the specific chronology that led to the January 8, 2025 directive. February 6, 2024, King Charles is diagnosed with cancer and begins treatment. February 12, 2024, Harry makes brief visit to Britain, meets Charles for approximately 20 minutes, does not see William. March 17, 2024, Meghan contacts Lambrook School about enrollment, triggering security review. April 3, 2024, William instructs staff to begin developing formal policies regarding Sussex contact with Wales children. May 6, 2024, Sussex team releases photographs of Archie and Lilibet with references to cousins, prompting William's anger about media manipulation. June 14, 2024, palace staff discovers Harry recorded conversations during Charles's illness. June 18, 2024, William meets with palace counsel to discuss legal options for preventing future contact. July 14, 2024, Meghan gives interview discussing Archie's questions about cousins, furthering William's conviction that children are being used as PR tools. August 3, 2024, photographer incident at Windsor Castle demonstrates active schemes to create contact scenarios. August 15, 2024, legal memorandum on California custody law implications is delivered to William. September 8, 2024, William reviews legal analysis and decides formal prohibition is necessary. September 22, 2024, draft directive is prepared by Palace Counsel. October 10, 2024, directive is reviewed by King Charles, who provides reluctant approval while expressing hope reconciliation remains possible. November 5, 2024, final directive language is approved, incorporating security protocols and enforcement mechanisms. November 22, 2024, intelligence about Christmas ambush plan accelerates implementation timeline. December 12, 2024, directive is reviewed by heads of household for operational feasibility. December 29, 2024, William provides final approval for January implementation. January 8, 2025, directive is distributed to senior staff across all royal residences. Notice the progression here. This is not impulsive decision made in anger. This is 18 months of escalating violations, security breaches, legal analysis, and careful planning culminating in permanent structural barrier. The legal and practical consequences of this directive extend across multiple dimensions. Under British family law, William, as father, has primary authority to determine his children's associations and relationships. Courts would intervene only if denying contact with extended family members demonstrated harm to the children's welfare. Palace legal analysis concluded that maintaining relationships with cousins who live overseas, whom they have never met, and whose parents have publicly attacked their parents, presents no welfare benefit that would overcome parental authority to limit contact. Immigration law provides additional enforcement mechanism. If Harry and Meghan attempt to bring Archie and Lilibet to Britain without advance notification and proper visa documentation, border authorities can deny entry. The directive includes coordination with Home Office to ensure that any Sussex travel involving the children triggers notification to palace security. Event security protocols now explicitly exclude the possibility of Sussex attendance at any function involving William's children. The June 2025 Trooping the Colour ceremony includes backup plans for immediately removing the Wales children from any area where unauthorized Sussex presence is detected. Future coronation planning for when William becomes king includes provisions that Archie and Lilibet will not receive invitations and will not be accommodated if they attempt to attend anyway. School administrators at Lambrook and any future educational institutions attended by George, Charlotte, and Louis have been briefed that Sussex enrollment inquiries should be immediately reported to palace security and politely declined, using capacity limitations as justification. The enforcement architecture is comprehensive, anticipates every possible contact scenario, and operates automatically without requiring William to make case-by-case decisions. Let us analyze the possible scenarios that could unfold from this situation. Scenario 1 involves Harry and Meghan accepting the directive and ceasing attempts to create cousin contact. In this scenario, they publicly acknowledge through unnamed sources that William has made his position clear, express sadness about the situation, but indicate they respect his authority as father and future king. This scenario represents the path of least resistance and avoids further conflict escalation. However, it requires Harry and Meghan to accept a significant defeat in the court of public opinion, acknowledging that their behavior has consequences they cannot overcome through media pressure. Based on their established pattern of refusing to accept responsibility or consequences, this scenario appears least likely despite being most pragmatic. Scenario 2 involves continued media pressure campaigns to force William to relent through public shaming. In this scenario, Harry and Meghan deploy interviews and photographs portraying William as cruel uncle who punishes innocent children. They emphasize that Archie and Lilibet are being denied their royal heritage and family connections through no fault of their own whatsoever. Public pressure builds, particularly in American media that lacks understanding of royal protocols. However, this scenario faces significant limitations because William has demonstrated complete immunity to public pressure on family matters throughout his entire adult life. He did not relent when Diana's death generated massive criticism of royal emotional restraint and traditional protocols. He did not accommodate when Harry and Meghan weaponized racism allegations that dominated international headlines for months. He will not compromise his children's protection for favorable headlines in publications he does not respect or value. Scenario 3 involves Harry making independent reconciliation attempts separate from Meghan, potentially offering to visit Britain alone with his children and accept whatever limited supervised contact William permits under controlled circumstances. This scenario would require Harry to effectively choose between his brother's family and his wife, demonstrating real independence and courage that he has not shown in 7 years of marriage. If this scenario occurred, William might permit brief supervised meeting under strict conditions, including no photography, no subsequent media discussion, and Meghan's complete physical absence. However, such a meeting would likely be one-time exception rather than establishing ongoing relationship, and William would ensure that his children understood the limitations. This scenario has moderate probability if Harry's financial situation deteriorates to the point where reconciliation with the royal family becomes economic necessity, potentially forcing choice between marriage and family restoration. Scenario 4 involves legal action by Harry and Meghan attempting to use British or international family courts to compel contact between the children. This scenario would require them to file suit claiming that preventing cousin relationships violates the Sussex children's rights to family connection and cultural heritage. However, British family courts grant enormous deference to parental authority in determining children's associations, particularly when the parents seeking contact have demonstrably poor judgment and have publicly attacked the family they now claim the children should know. Additionally, such legal action would generate massive negative publicity for Harry and Meghan, portraying them as using courts to force relationships that one parent has determined are not in his children's best interests. The financial cost of such litigation, combined with the low probability of success and the reputational damage, make this scenario unlikely, though not impossible, if the Sussex situation becomes desperate. Scenario 5 is the most probable outcome. Harry and Meghan continue making periodic media references to the cousin separation, using it as ongoing grievance that generates sympathetic coverage and reinforces their victim narrative. However, they take no concrete action to change the situation because they recognize that William's position is legally unassailable and immune to public pressure. The separation becomes permanent fact that both sides accept, referenced in future Sussex media projects as evidence of royal family cruelty, but never seriously challenged through legal or diplomatic channels. Archie and Lilibet grow up knowing they have royal cousins they have never met, potentially developing their own resentments that could emerge in future decades when they reach adulthood and can make independent contact decisions. This scenario aligns with established patterns where the Sussex couple prioritizes grievance maintenance over actual problem solving. The separation serves their narrative purposes while avoiding risks associated with legal challenges or genuine reconciliation attempts that might fail and expose their limited leverage. Based on everything we have examined, the pattern of security breaches, the documented use of children as media props, the legal liability concerns, and the complete collapse of trust between the brothers, Scenario 5 represents the most probable trajectory. William has made a calculated decision that protecting his children from Sussex manipulation justifies accepting whatever criticism results from preventing cousin relationships. He has legal authority, institutional support, and enforcement mechanisms that make his position essentially impregnable. Harry and Meghan will complain about the separation but will not risk legal action that could definitively demonstrate their lack of standing or moral authority to demand access. The January 8 directive therefore represents the new permanent normal that will define these children's relationships for the remainder of their childhoods and quite possibly their entire lives. King Charles has 17 months of declining health projected by his medical team before transition to hospice care becomes likely. When William ascends the throne, possibly by mid-2026, his authority over royal family structure will become absolute. The directive prohibiting contact will be reinforced with institutional weight that even Charles's lingering reconciliation hopes cannot moderate. Harry faces complete financial collapse by September 2025 when the Netflix deal expires with no renewal expected given poor performance of Sussex content. Meghan faces potential deportation proceedings if immigration authorities investigate the visa applications that sources indicate contained materially false statements about her marriage timing and intentions. The 30-day deadline that Charles reportedly issued for Harry to choose between Meghan and his family expires on February 7, 2025, just 17 days from now. If you want to know what choice Harry makes when that deadline expires, when William becomes king and consolidates power, when the Netflix revenue ends and financial reality forces decisions that love and loyalty cannot sustain, you need to subscribe and hit that notification bell right now, because what we have covered tonight is just the family dynamics dimension of this crisis. The real question, the question that determines whether Archie and Lilibet have any future connection to British royal status at all, is whether their births occurred as we have been told, or whether the hospital record analysis that investigators are completing will prove that the Sussex succession claims rest on deception that constitutes fraud against the crown, and the evidence on that front makes the cousin separation look like a minor family disagreement. Type divorce if you think Harry should leave Meghan and reconcile with his family before the deadline expires. Type stay if you think he should choose his marriage over his titles and inheritance. Type exile if you think he should take a third option and disappear from public life entirely. I am George Will, and I will see you in the next investigation.